introduce the next guest speaker, Jenny McCormick. And Jenny has been a director of her own consultancy company, Movers and Shakers, for the last 10 years, providing services to a range of public, private and community sector organisations. The services include curriculum development, training and facilitation, marketing, strategic planning and motivational speaking. That's quite the challenge. Prior to this, Jenny worked at a range of senior leadership roles with TAFE and other vocational education and training related agencies for over 13 years. She's a passionate educator who spent the last 8 years building a professional knowledge and skills in the exciting field of neuroscience, in particular its application to the development of brain-based learning strategies and to personal health and well-being. Jenny holds a number of degrees and she hails from Adelaide and enjoys cooking, reading, crabbing and growing roses. Jenny is going to take us into our brains to understand the neuroscience of belonging. Jenny, you've entered a very politically charged moment in the Linkwest life. We definitely need less cortisol and more serotonin.
Absolutely.
Please welcome Jenny to Linkwest's Belonging Conference.
Look at all the lonely people. Look at all the lonely people. I'm ready. They stop the rights in a church where a wedding fits. Lives in a dream, waiting at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a job at the door. Now who is it for? All alone. Where do they all come from? All alone. Where do they all belong? Father McCormick, writing the words of the sermon that no one will hear. No one comes here. Look at him working, darning the socks in the night when there's nobody there. Why does he care? Oh, where do they all come from? All alone. Where do they all belong? Ah, look at all the lonely people. Ah, look at all the lonely people.
You can clap. All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people, where do they all belong? And why should we even care that they belong? Distinguished guests, friends and colleagues, I think, yes, welcome to the Neuroscience of Belonging, an exploration of why, as human beings, we have an intense need to be connected with others, to feel loved and cared for, to be accepted, and to have a true sense of belonging from a brain perspective. As I move through my presentation, it is my intention to share some of the research findings and my own thoughts and insights so that you too may gain some perspective on this very increasingly important social issue. I would just like you to contemplate for a moment on your own life experiences with the issue of belonging, and to particularly take note of the first memory that comes into your mind. Some of you may have recalled and revisit the excitement, exhilaration and pure joy of feeling a total sense of belonging to a partner, to family, community or a team. Others of you may have revisited and recalled in great vivid detail and physically felt the utter anguish, the distress and emotional pain of loneliness, isolation, exclusion or rejection. Personally, when I went back and thought about this, I recall being dumped by my first boyfriend At 13, I recall the place, exactly what I'm wearing, because I'd made a pretty new little polka dot halter top, the words that were expressed, and getting home and crying absolutely uncontrollably in the kitchen. Only to be told by father, not to worry, Jennifer, there'll be plenty more fish in the sea. And me replying, but I just don't want any other fish. We recall our memories, particularly ones associated with negative emotions, very, very clearly. And to do a little straw poll, raise your hands if your first memory was positive and negative. Okay, bit of a 50-50 split. The bottom line is that none of us is immune to being lonely, feeling ostracised, rejected. It's part of being human. So at any point in time, we too are the lonely people. However, as long as we feel safe, have meaning and purpose in our lives, and have strong personal relationships, we are able to bounce back. We are able to dust ourselves off, pick ourselves up, and start all over again. But if we don't have these structures in place, particularly people who can pick us up and to dust us up and pick ourselves up, it is very, very difficult to bounce back. Stuck in this lonely space, it can lead to further withdrawal, further isolation and lack of connectedness, and where the feelings of lack of self-worth, chronic loneliness and invisibility become the norm. Now, compared to 100 years ago when our ancestors were totally immersed in their communities and extended families, we've become increasingly disconnected from one another. Social media platforms where we interact in virtual communities, linked by a plethora of electronic devices, have actually left us craving, starving for true social connectedness. Indeed, no storage vault of online friends can ever replace the benefits we can receive to face-to-face social interaction, simple human contact, in particular touch. So where are the lonely people? Unfortunately and increasingly, they are everywhere. Indeed, a study in the States in 1980, when it asked the question about how many people were feeling lonely, 20% reported that they were feeling a sense of loneliness. Now, 40%. We are increasingly becoming disconnected from each other. However, not here, not now, and you've had enough of sitting. It's time to move, to get some of the happy drug, dopamine, which we like, yes, reduce cortisol, up on the dopamine, flowing through our system, and to laugh and play and be in communion with each other. It's time to seize the moment. Everybody get up and move just a couple of places from your chair. Now, my former life, I was a dance teacher. This is very simple. And it's not about being perfect. You can make as many mistakes you like. In fact, I might make some because this is actually can get quite tricky if you don't concentrate. So this is called, this is how we rock. And we just have to have a few little actions to go with it. So the first line of the song goes, this is how we rock. So we're going to rock. This is how we rock. That's it. And this is how we roll. That's it. This is how we stop. And this is how we stroll. Got it? Now then it might go rock, roll, stop, stroll. That's when it gets tricky. But let's have a look and see how we go to get that dopamine running, have some fun and enjoy the pleasure of dance.
This is how we rock. This is how we roll.
Woo! This is how we stop. And And this is how we stroll. That's it, you're doing well. Rock, roll, stop, and stroll. Rock, roll, stop, and stroll. Rock, roll, stop, and stroll. This is how we rock. That's it. And this is how we roll. Woohoo! And this is how we stop. And this is how we roll. Okay? Rock, roll, stop, and stroll. Rock, roll, stop, and stroll. Rock, roll, stop, and stroll. This is how we rock. Well done. Terrific. God, I won't be able to get through the rest of the speech now. I've got my heart rate up so much. That's it. Give ourselves time to breathe. Did you enjoy that? Did you have some fun? Do we live in the moment? Happiness is about being in the moment. Thank you for playing along. Now, without knowing anything about the chemistry, biology, I'm not pressing this at the right pressure. That's it. Without knowing anything about the chemistry, biology, and other machinations of the brain, we all instinctively, intuitively know that being positively connected to others and community, whatever that might look like, is a very good thing for us. However, I'd like to take you on a brief journey into the brain to affirm your instincts and intuition from a neuroscience perspective. Over the last few decades, there's been an absolute explosion of research in this area. What has been discovered through this research, and very ably assisted by all the great imaging technologies where we can actually take brain scans and find out what parts of the brain are firing up in response to various stimulus, we are learning some fabulous things. And really to know that the brain is absolutely amazing, incredible. We know now that the brain is plastic. It can rewire itself. It can reroute if we have brain damage. We can learn and create new neural pathways all throughout our life. It's not hardwired for learning. We know that we can grow new neurons, neurogenesis. And this is really pertinent to our conversation. We also know that when we experience emotional pain, and they can do this by using the MRI scans, when we experience emotional pain, the same regions of the brain fire up as if we were actually experiencing physical pain. So that sort of explains why, when we feel rejected, we go like, I just feel as though I've got a broken heart. My heart is just broken. We actually feel it physically. The brain thinks it's the same as if we're actually occurring, that was occurring actually physically to us. And it makes us think, I'm sure we've heard of lots of stories of people dying of a broken heart. This gives us some insight into why that can occur. So we feel emotional pain as physical pain. We also know that as a survival instinct, and it was interesting that it was a 50-50 split here because the brain actually has a negative bias. Our number one thing, number one thing our brain is on about is about survival. And to that extent, it's always on the lookout for threats, for danger. So neurologically, we have a negative bias. So we do encode negative memories much more easily, much more strongly than we do positive ones. It's a bit of a bummer, really. But it explains why we can have lots of positive things going on in our life, and one bad thing happens, and all of a sudden we're down in the dumps. We're sort of like, because we focus on that, because that takes over. Now, what we, our brains, as I said, are absolutely fascinating. And what I'd like to do, I think I've gone back to my slide, let's come here. What I'd like to do now is to expose you to what I've called Neuroscience 101. It's a little YouTube video about a journey in the brain, just so that you can kind of understand some of the machinations and some of the language that we will use as we move forward.
Underneath the newfangled cortex, the brainstem, the limbic system, and the basal ganglia date back to the mastodons, the dinosaurs, and the first amphibians. In humans, the old parts of the brain oversee emotion and help build memories. They control heart rate and breathing. They also form intimate connections with the new brain, the cortex. Though less than a quarter-inch thick, the cortex is the brain's crowning glory. Among its roles, the cortex is our reality check. It filters and orders the outside world for us and allows us to see, touch, hear, and speak. The cortex is also the human thinking cap. All our plans, thoughts, and ideas originate in this layer. The cortex is packed with nerve cells. About 2/3 of all our neurons operate here. A piece of cortex tissue no larger than a pinhead can house 30,000 of these cells. Each neuron has a job: to communicate with other neurons. The brain works by forming networks among these cells. The long, spiny branches of the networks create a neural forest of astounding intricacy. Neurons use these communication lines to talk to each other with electric and chemical signals. Here, under microscope, are two neurons linking up. Though it may look like they fuse together, neurons don't actually touch each other. A closer look reveals that a tiny gap called the synapse separates their branches. This is where a message passes from one neuron to the next. The message comes from here, small sacs that store chemical molecules. When stimulated, these sacs release their molecules which cross the cell membrane into the synaptic gap. An electric zap allows this to happen. Meantime, the receiving neuron has special welcome sites for the incoming molecule. These receptor sites bind with the molecule. When they do, special gates open up. The gates let in a flood of charged particles, sodium and potassium ions, which start up a new electrical signal in the receiving neuron. This simple chain of events, an electrical zap, followed by chemical changes, followed by another electrical zap, is the basis of all brain activity. It's how neurons speak to each other. Here, then, is the key to the brain's complexity. There are 100 billion neurons in the brain. Each neuron, like a bit player in a grand production, processes its information, then hooks up with as many as 50,000 other neurons to send and receive messages. 100 billion neurons times 50,000 connections. It's this complexity that allows us to think imaginatively. On their own, neurons aren't very bright, but put 100 billion of them together in a small space and let them all start talking to each other, and you start to get brainstorm. The trillions of neural networks, like an improvisational orchestra, create new ideas and connect different thoughts in a whimsical and sometimes inspired fashion. It's this impromptu ability to produce new things in our brains that allows us to progress, that quite simply takes us from here to here.
Well, if you weren't convinced before, I hope you are now. What an amazing thing the brain is. But regardless of that, I mean, we've talked about quite a number of the research findings, but honestly, we've really only touched the iceberg, tip of the iceberg. You know, I read a lot of neuroscience books, well, I try to, because they're very heavy going. You certainly get a headache and feel your brain rewiring after reading those and trying to, understand the language and take it all in. But even the researchers will say, look, we're pretty sure about this. We know this to be true. But on these other questions, at the moment, we've got no idea. So while we've had decades and decades of research, we're going to have decades and decades more, and watch this space. Because quite possibly what I might be saying up here today or suggesting, in 10 years' time might be proven, to be absolutely false. I hope not, but that would mean other people are wrong. But so it's absolutely, truly incredible. So what we do know, however, and from the research, is that our brains have developed as a result of a very, very sophisticated evolutionary process over billions of years. Billions of years. There we go. From starting as a little single cell, looks like that little tadpole, to fish and frogs, to crocodiles, reptiles, through to other mammals and apes, and then the whole line of hominids, that's all of our kind of human ancestors, to where we are today. This evolutionary process has basically given us a brain structure that has 3 brains, and they're sort of built. It's not quite on top of one another, like you didn't start with reptilian brain and then you got the next one in the next one, because you sort of had a bit of everything. But you fundamentally got this expansion and building up of the brain, particularly the neocortex, which is our skull cap, the thinking brain, the centre of all of our ability to imagine and dream and to plan, and also helps to moderate our emotions. Now, so we've got these 3 brains. The reptilian brain, sometimes called the lizard brain, limbic brain, sometimes called the paleomammal brain or the midbrain, and the neocortex, sometimes called the human brain. Doesn't matter, they're basically all saying the same sorts of things. And the tricky thing about the brain is that you can't really pinpoint one part of the brain and say that's where that occurs. Language is there. All language occurs there, or all emotion occurs there. It does not work that way. I mean, you've got the whole of these three brains interacting in a very, very complex way to allow us to keep our bodies safe, to help us build effective social relationships, and to think, dream, and imagine. So that's basically our brain biology. But our scientists have, but why did these evolutionary processes occur? I mean, what caused our brains to become so large in comparison to our very early hominid ancestors, like this fellow? Well, research conducted by anthropologist Robin Dunbar concluded that the stronger predictor of a species' brain size, specifically the size of its neocortex, the big thinking cap, is the size of its social group. We have big brains in order to socialise. And the Homo heidelbergensis, that's a mouthful, existed in Africa about 600,000 years ago. and is believed to be the ancestor of us, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. And it is revealing that they appear to be the first hominoids to have a division of labour, i.e. they work together to hunt, to have central campsites, and maybe to be the first ones to bury their dead, that long ago. So somewhere in the evolutionary process, our ancestors figured out that we had a better chance of survival, and it was, and I might say still is, about survival from a brain perspective, if we lived in groups. And for this to be successful, however, we needed to get along, to moderate our emotions and anticipate others' thoughts and actions. So therefore, we had further development of the limbic system and neocortex as we got into bigger groups, so we built bigger brains. And survival and social interaction, therefore, became inextricably linked, to be hardwired into our brain, to create a brain that is absolutely social by nature. Not only do we need food, water, shelter, but we absolutely need social connectedness. It is a basic need. Now, scientists have now discovered that we have a fourth brain. Now, it's not a structural brain like the reptilian or the cortex, neocortex, or the limbic system, the limbic brain, but a system that involves the interaction of neurotransmitters, brain structures, and the central nervous system, our vagus nerve. Now, some of those neurotransmitters, we talked about dopamine and oxytocin, all like happy, happy drugs. We love those drugs. When a mother bonds with a baby, they get an absolute hit of oxytocin. That's a love bonding drug. That's what it's called. And it's interesting that this interaction between our central nervous system and the vagus nerve, which I've done a bit of reading about, and if you've read Michael Mosley's Clever Guts, anybody in here read that book? Totally recommend it. What we talk about is the vagus nerve actually extends from the bottom of our brain into our guts and is communicating messages up and down. And in fact, we have a mesh brain that goes down that area from our brain to our gut, and it has 100 million, not billion, 100 million neurons in it that actually are all communicating back from our gut to our brain, which is the number of neurons that a cat has. So, trust your guts is the story, because your guts knows stuff. It's very smart. So those little microbes down there not only are chewing up and processing food, but they're intelligent. They're very smart bugs. So, our social brain thrives on social interactions. This is what it needs to survive and thrive. And John Arden, in his book Rewire Your Brain, which is a key reference point to my speech here, talks about the notion of social medicine. What we need to have lots and lots of is social medicine. Social interactions, things where we do stuff together, where we share, we give, we receive, and in particularly opportunities to touch, and I can't stress this enough. Caressing, soft touching, comforting releases in our brain hormones like dopamine and oxytocin. We know that it's dopamine, and oxytocin. All our happy drugs, we like them, and endorphins, which make us feel happy. And I always like to encourage people, and you need to do at least once during the conference, to give someone a 6-second hug. At the 6-second point, you watch what happens to them. They literally go, because they're getting a really good dopamine hit. Touching is really, really good, and that could be as simple as a little hand massage. The positive effects of social medicine: decreased blood pressure, decreased cortisol levels, decreased depression, decreased anxiety, slowing down of the cognitive decline. It's a natural killer for our a natural booster of killer cells in our immune system, and it decreases serum cholesterol. That's pretty good. But another meta study about loneliness, the same one related to the States, was that loneliness is a major risk factor for premature death. Indeed, you have a 5% increased risk of premature death through air pollution, 20% through obesity, 30% through excessive drinking, and 45% from loneliness. Now, I want you to give and receive some social medicine. Can somebody just give me a clue on timing, please? How long have I got left? Oh, goody. I'm right on time. That's it. On your tables, you should have a little card, and if you haven't got one, you need to go to another space because there's one at every space. And, I was going to ask you to be my volunteer. Oh, good. Can you stay for 5 minutes? Okay, come up here. Thank you. Okay. Is he important? Do I need you to give him a 6-second hug?
Give a hug.
Okay. 6-second hug coming up. Okay. See, you've got to make it 6 because I always want to escape at 2 or 3. Okay. Now, so, no, he doesn't need it. No, you just got to do some actions. So this is called Shake It Up. So we're going to have, we've all got a little handshake, which my friend, namely Rob, is going to help me demonstrate. Then you're going to actually have to go around the room, say hello to people, shake, 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 find your matching handshake, and then you'll gather with those, and then we're going to do some social medicine work. Okay, Rob, right, there's sway. Sway, sway, sway. Okay. Who's from the country? I know there's some regional people in here. I am too, from Mount Gambier, which is about 455 k's south of Mount Gambier, and I grew up milking cows, so this is a milker. Okay, okay. All right, the top half. Okay, yes, that's it. That's it. Very good, Rob. The I am in control handshake. Oh, he got it already. The flip. Okay, the grab, it's the I'll invade your personal space handshake. Ooh. The good old boy thump. There you go, mate.
G'day.
That's it, that's it, that's it. The one I used to hate over the tennis net, the fish. Yeah, you just instinctively get this, don't you? Well, what about the finger hold then? What about the finger hold? That's it. We don't like that one. And the one that men know very, very well, the vice. That's it. That's it. I've learned to shake hard and not grimace for over many years of shaking hands with men. Now, have I got them all? Have I missed any along the way? Oh, the pump from the Heart Foundation. Pump. That's it. Yeah, okay. Feel that heart pumping. Okay, sway, topper. Okay, flip, 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 flip. That's it. Grab. Good old boy thump. We've got the milker. Fishy, fishy, finger hold, and the pump. Well done, Rob. You're a champion. Give Rob a hand. That's it. Okay. Thank you, Don. You can go now. Okay. So, what I want you to do is I want you to get up. Now, I put out about 10, there are 10 cards for each finger hole, but because there's not every pace is set, we might be a little flexible because I've had no way of knowing exactly how many people are going to be in the room at the start of the day. So what I want you to do, move around, say hello, shake hands, but I want you to build a group of 4 people with your handshake. Once you've got a group of 4, move to the side of the room and let all the ones that are still wandering around get on with their business. Okay, off you go. Okay, we seem to be getting fairly close. Even if you've got two, can you move to the side? If you're lost, go to the centre, they're all there. If you've got three, come to the side, that's probably enough. Maybe there isn't a fourth one. But everybody needs one partner at least. Well done, team. You did that pretty well. For 160 odd people, you found each other very, very quickly. Right. Now, I want you to choose somebody in your group. Choose one person in your group to form a pair, then choose somebody who you do not know, if that's possible. And move with your new partner to a table, grab a pen and a piece of white card that's actually on the table. And one of the brain postcards. Do that for me, please. We're looking for a milker. One milker. Any milkers? Any spare milkers? Okay, thank you. Right. And a swayer. We're looking for another swayer. You swayers? Milkers? Yes, swayers over here. Look, as long as at this point, everybody just grab a partner if you're remaining. Yes, that's okay. Anybody lost? We can't have anybody that doesn't belong. If you got a three, are you lost, darling? Oh, you haven't got a partner. Oh, no. Excuse me, sweetie. Could you, over here? We've got a partner. There's a three over there. Here's the next one. Thank you. See how it felt to feel rejected even for a moment? I hope that's not a lasting memory. Okay, right. We're good to go. Now, so we've got that. Now you need to go somewhere where you can just sit because you're going to do a couple of tasks with your partner. So make sure you've got a pen, a white card and a postcard and go and sit down somewhere or sit on the floor, I don't mind, anywhere. Radio. Thanks, Frank. Now, who here listens to Radio National? Few. I tend to listen to all the repeat podcasts during the night when I can't sleep. So, but I feel very noble about that because I figure I'm getting educated, you know, while I'm in bed and while I'm sleeping because I leave it on going, so something hopefully is going into the brain. But the other night they were talking about the whole issue of homelessness and inequality. And they were interviewing the CEO of the Wayward Centre, Reverend, I can't remember his name now, but one of the guys who was, that was a client. And it was very interesting hearing the client talk. It was a really good story, actually, because 7 years after he became homeless, he's now actually working at the centre himself. But he was saying that the biggest thing that happened for him when he left his family, didn't go into details about that, but at that point, he not only lost family, but he lost community. And he repeatedly said how important community was, how much that loss impacted on him, and his way back from homelessness was actually by starting to belong to a community, which is absolutely incredible. But he also talked about being homeless and the fact that, there's no recognition, it's almost like you're invisible. And one of the strategies they said was just to talk to people on the streets. You don't have to give them money. Talk to them. How are you? How are things going? Good to see you. Make them feel as though they actually exist. Now, this first little exercise is in that realm. And you'll probably be, you know, I'll probably never get invited back because first of all I've asked you to dance, now I'm going to ask you to draw. No! Okay. So, I call this little activity, I see you. Now, what I want you to do on your little white sheets of paper is I want you to look into the eyes of your partner and very surreptitiously, don't let them see what you're doing. I'm only going to give you a few minutes, so it's a very, very brief sketch. I want you to draw your partner. This will be your gift to them. After. Off you go. Lily, how am I going for time, darling?
Coming on the back 5.
Good. Finished. Good job. Okay, one more minute. Okay. Assuming we're all pretty well finished, with great fanfare, drum roll, can you please give your gift to your partner? Oh, I see some 6-second hugs happening here. 6-second hugs in appreciation, that's good. That is excellent. Well done. More huggies. I trust that you are going to totally treasure your gift, given with great love and acceptance. And I'm sure you'll get lots of laughs as you show them around the conference. Now, I've developed these little postcards for you. we're not going to get time to do any work on them in this session now, but I've spent a lot of time doing them, and I really want you to pay attention to them. It's a social medicine plan. And what I'd really like you to be able to do before you leave here today, sometime, is to think about what are you going to do for yourself to give yourself some social medicine. You know, you're going to go and have a massage, that's always good. What are you going to do to nurture yourself? You're going to go and reacquaint yourself with a friend that you really love but you haven't seen for a while. What are you going to do to provide some social medicine for some friends and family? Invite them over to dinner. That was another thing the research said. Nobody invites everybody over to dinner anymore. Don't understand that. But invite somebody over to dinner, ask them to go out to the art gallery or to a function, whatever. And more importantly, or as importantly, I want you to think about how are you going to do even more? What are some things you could do even more to facilitate opportunities for the lonely, the disenfranchised, for the disengaged to come in and share and gain some of the love and social medicine you offer? Because at the end of the day, my final question posed was, where do all the lonely people belong? Well, of course they belong with others, and my friends, they belong with you. Neighbourhood houses, community centres are doing the work of belonging, community building and building relationships, providing that safe environment every single day. I'm an absolute passionate supporter of the community sector, as my friends in South Australia will attest. But I suspect that a lot of this work goes unacknowledged and underappreciated by your funders. So, while you're being publicly known, this is my take-home message for you. While you're publicly known as centres of learning, you know, you do adult community education courses and centres of community building, may I suggest that you add to your list that you are centres of healing? Because this is what you are and this is what you're exceptional at doing. I offer this concept to you from my marketing hat on as a new unique selling proposition for your centres, and encourage you to argue your case for funding, not just through the traditional economic impacts, which everybody likes that, oh, you know, help people get, you know, go into training and employment, but what is just as important a social issue, and that is the health impacts of having so many people in our community. I mentioned them all to you. That is costing us an absolute fortune, and it's all preventable without not one pill, just some nice social medicine. In conclusion, where are all the lonely people? Well, they're everywhere in our communities. Anybody from South Perth Community Centre? I nicked them off your website. Where do they belong? Here, in our safe, nurturing neighbourhood houses and community centres. And why is it important that we care? Because as social animals with social brains, social interaction, acceptance, love, inclusion and a sense of belonging is critical, absolutely critical to our physical, our emotional, our spiritual and our mental health. The neuroscience of belonging.